Coming at you live from all over Ohio. A Cleveland Browns podcast full of laughs, rants, fun, and stats. A place where all Browns fans' voices are welcome and heard. A show that aims to inform and entertain you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Barking Browns Show.
Good Tuesday evening to all of you people out there in the YouTubes and the Twitters and the Facebooks. This is episode 114. I'm Jacob. That's Nick. We're brought to you as always by our friends over at Homage Apparel. I'm back in the classic Brownie the Elf. We got the Nick Chubb NFL Blitz. Jeff's already starting with me in the comments. And click the link down in the description below. They'll take you to their Browns apparel collection, get you guys all set up and ready to go. If you want to check out our Discord, we post a lot of rumors for all the Ohio sports, as well as the betting team over there is setting up a bunch of great bets for you to tail in the Discord. So check that out in the link in the description down below. Nick, how are you this fine Tuesday?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm a lot less wet than we were yesterday because you know what? It's funny because normally Browns camp, I feel like in past years, like they'll cancel it if it rains. There was no canceling. We sat through the rain, completely soaked, but we did it anyway, and that was really exciting. It was great. You know, Jacob made the journey all the way up here, which was, me, Jacob, Andy. We ended up seeing Sherry and Lana, who got her jersey signed by Kevin Stefanski, and we had Ross came up with the family. Had a grand old time with camp. And that was wonderful. I'm going to camp tomorrow, and I am making preparations, Jacob. I don't know if I've told you this. I'm going to Philadelphia on August 17th for some Cleveland Browns preseason football. What better reason to travel? Browns football.
On your birthday.
On my birthday.
The worst part was that we got pretty soaking wet yesterday. I got home later to realize that I had a rain jacket in the car. So that was a thing I figured out today. It was very, very vanilla of me. Anyway, we will check out what's going on. Jeff, Jeff, don't you get me started. You stir the pot in here, Jeff. I know what you're
Ascension in the ranks here over the Zeke Elliott takes.
He knows what he's doing. So we're gonna get to all this, man. We're gonna get to the all of our training camp observations from yesterday. We'll get to that later in the show. We're gonna start, of course, with the injury stuff that came out today. Yesterday and today. We'll start with Jerome Ford because that one is probably the most significant one. Obviously, they have some situations with some depth pieces at the edge, and we'll get to that in a second. But you're looking at your number 2 running back in a system where you're going to, you've got a running back that you don't want to run into the ground is what I'm trying to get at. So you want in this system, you want to have at least a semi-competent or some kind of running back behind Nick Chubb that you are confident in. Rather, other people would be confident in them or not. It is what it is, but you want someone else back there, especially on those passing downs when you've been running the ball a ton. So you need more than one running back is what I'm getting at. I don't know why I'm having such trouble, so much trouble articulating right now. So that's the one that is the biggest because that's the guy that is now, at least for now, out that has a significant role, and that's Jerome Ford. I watched him hop off, and I thought to myself, here we go. It did end up being a hamstring. I was worried about his Achilles or his ankle, because when he came off, he just hopped. Like he did not put that foot down. He hopped on his one good leg, hopped all the way over. Now he did get up and walk in on his own power, so that was nice. But the hamstring, even if it is several weeks, is better than what I initially thought, and that's usually because I'm worst case scenario.
Because when he injured it, his leg he kept it completely straight. And Jacob, full disclosure, so we were at camp last year when Jakeem Grant unfortunately tore his Achilles. And Jacob was like, if Jerome Ford tore his Achilles, I'm just going home. I drove all the way up here from Athens, made the whole trek. I'm just going home. And so I'm glad we didn't have to do that. Man, hamstring. Okay. I'm glad it's not as serious with Jerome Ford. That's a good place to start. But hamstring injuries are so frustrating because we all know that guys can very easily re-injure those hamstrings when they're injuries that are temperamental and take time to come back from. So that's really unfortunate, especially when you're thinking about the fact that literally today, it's ironic how things work. Today, Jerome Ford's injury is announced. Today is the day that Kareem Hunt was going to sign with the Saints. Apparently didn't. I went to sleep after work today.
Yeah.
Apparently did an about face, and which was strange to me in the first.
The Colts. So essentially, for those that don't know, so like Kareem goes to the Saints, and the news breaks this morning like the Saints are going to sign him and Anthony Barr, the linebacker.
Yeah,
like it's like they're going to sign. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so then all of a sudden it was like both of them left without deals. And in Kareem's case, what happened was the Colts literally called him and offered him more money. Like they called him up and were like, we're going to give you more than what the Saints are going to give you. And well, I assume they called his agent, not necessarily him. Yeah. And Kareem was advised to go meet with them. So that tells me that they called and offered like significant enough money to where it was like, hey, you get up here, dude. That was crazy.
Well, especially because so I wish Kareem well in New Orleans, but I was thinking about it, and it's like I know Kamara's suspended the first 3 games, but you still signed Jamal Williams behind him, and then they have a guy that they drafted whose name escapes me right now, but Kareem was going to kind of be like say beyond week 3, right? Like I would assume Kareem Hunt would be running back 2-3,
a small role.
Right. So that considered, which I think speaks to the job situation for these free agent running backs right now. Mm-hmm. So it makes a lot more sense to go to Indy than it would New Orleans. But honestly, and Jacob, I think this is kind of a good way to talk a little bit about potential options. Mm-hmm. Of all the free agent running backs, guys you don't have to trade for right now. If I had to pick one, I would want Kareem Hunt more than I would want Ezekiel Elliott, more than I would want Dalvin Cook costs too much, and more than who is the other the last free agent running back that's out there, the other significant veteran,
J.D. McKissic.
My brain just melted mid sentence. So I think if you're giving me the options of free agent running backs, and I don't know. Maybe he'll sign with Indianapolis tomorrow because that whole Jonathan Taylor situation is dicey and they don't have a whole lot behind him. So maybe that probably makes a lot of sense for Kareem if he's looking for his best opportunity, right? Because we don't think the Jerome Ford injury is going to be super long term. But if I had a choice, I think I'd pick Kareem. Where are you at on that?
I'm good on Kareem Hunt. I was not. I just feel like he fell off last year, and I want a dude. See, and this is where it gets really tricky with the market, which is what happens when you have a major contributor potentially go down on August 8th. Thankfully, it's probably only going to bleed into a game or two. And truthfully be told, and I'll get to it in a second, there may be some options to get through that to where you don't need anybody. And that's what we'll get to here in a second, especially as we start talking about the 2 defensive ends. I think J.D. McKissic's where I would go. In terms of not trading for a good guy, I think McKissic is the best option because he makes the most sense in terms of this system and where they want to go and for the style of running back that you want behind Nick Chubb. And which is what Jerome Ford also is, I think. Oh, okay, this is funny. Apparently Anthony Barr now has another visit as well. So all of a sudden they go from signing 2 veterans this morning to maybe not getting any of them. That's crazy.
I will say to your point, Jacob, I just looked it up real quick. Of all the potential options, J.D. McKissic is the only one of them to average over 4 yards a carry last year. Kareem Hunt didn't do it.
Leonard Fournette.
Leonard Fournette. That's the
Yeah,
other
I
running
just
back. Thank
realized
you.
that was what you were talking about.
Yes, because I was looking up. So Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, and Ezekiel Elliott all averaged in the 3-point something yards per carry. You don't want that. So that is, no disrespect to any of those guys. If you're picking options, but J.D. McKissick, on the other hand, averaged 4.3 yards carry.
Well, and my point too with this stuff is like some people are like, well, they're coming in to be backups. They're coming in, and I'm like, yes, they are, but they're also a play away from being starters. Yep. And we've seen Nick Chubb miss time in the last 4+ seasons. We've seen him miss, and not significant time. He's not going down for like 12 weeks, but if he goes down in week 1 or week 2, and Ford's still on a hamstring, and Connie points out that a lot of times these injuries are 6 weeks, which they have the advantage of the season being like 33 days, something like that. Yeah. So you've got 4 weeks before football starts. So you have that before you start actually missing games in terms of the injury. But if Chubb goes down, even if it's for a game or for a half, I don't want Ezekiel Elliott as my running back. I don't want Leonard Fournette or Kareem Hunt as my running back. I don't really want J.D. McKissick. But of the 4, I would go with that. And I think he's the one that has the most in the tank of what's left. Because I look at the other things, and I mean, you've got some younger players on here too. Benny Snell's out there, former Pittsburgh Steeler. Isn't that somewhat interesting? I want to say Master Teague because I just loved Master Teague at Ohio State just because that was my favorite. Because his name was Master Teague, but it was Master Teague the third. So there were several masters in that family, and I loved it. I just absolutely. And I loved him at Ohio State. He was a good football player. It wasn't just his name.
Oh, might have lost Jacob. But just as I think we're trying to get him back.
Son of a bitch. I dropped such a good joke. And my internet went out.
No. All right. Well, in the meantime, as we wait for Jacob, I just think that when you look at the Browns and the way that they've used Nick Chubb, like he is still coming off over 300 carries. And that's significant where no matter how you spin it. And I don't think if the Browns were going to be honest with you, if you got them to be honest with you, I don't think that they'd want to give Nick Chubb 300 carries. And so you have that combined with the fact that since Kevin Stefanski's been here, they have always used a split time backfield. So even if Jerome Ford was healthy, I would like to think that Nick Chubb's usage would go down some from last year. So all the more reason that you need. I think it would make sense in general because we've been talking about this. Like, is Hassan Hall a guy? Is Brian Kelly?
John Kelly.
John Kelly. I can never remember his name. I apologize, John Kelly. Is John Kelly that guy? Both guys had some nice moments in the preseason, but we were talking already about like who's running back 3, dude. And last week's episode we talked about the running back room and how there's not really a whole lot of known behind Nick Chubb, right? So all the more reason I think, and now. With the Ford injury, I think that gives you even more sense of urgency. So I would like to expect that we're going to start seeing reports of bringing guys in for meetings or that kind of thing. Would you be on board with that, Jacob?
Yeah, I think they'll look at it. I think you're in an interesting position because they had the day off today and nothing really came of it. They'll practice tomorrow before an off day on Thursday for the game on Friday. Excuse me. And this is what I was getting at too. So real quick, the 2 options I would do, this is where I would want to go. I would go the trade route. There's 2 players that I think you could get that are serviceable players. The first one is Michael Carter in New York. Now, I realize with Dalvin Cook leaving town without signing, there's probably a good shot that Michael Carter, who's a pretty good receiving back, which is why I would target him. There's a pretty good chance they're not moving him unless they get Dalvin Cook. I think that it's fairly safe to say because, Breece Hall's coming back from injury. So you're not going to trade your backup when you have your starter coming off significant injury if they don't add Dalvin Cook, who then would be the starter, and then they'd feel fine about Breece Hall probably as number 2. You can throw a 6th or 7th round conditional pick in there because that's normally what these sorts of trades are. Or they have a lot of this is something that we continue to see, dude. I love this. We continue to see this year after year. They got a lot of good offensive linemen, and they're not going to be able to keep all of them. So the Jets, I don't know what the Jets starting line, I think, is going to be pretty good. I'm not sure what the depth situation is for their backups in terms of their offensive line. But if they need something, there could be a situation where it's like, here's Colby Gossett, Like
Sure.
Colby Gossett played really, really good. I just don't think he makes that roster. He's an interior player. He can play on both sides. You're like, oh, here's Colby Gossett for Michael Carter. Everybody's happy. If you don't go that route, and let's say Dalvin Cook goes to Miami, well, there's my other guy, Jeff Wilson.
Yep.
We'll get Jeff Wilson. Again, Jeff Wilson's a funny situation because people are like, he misses all these games, and he's like, he played 16 games last year. But anyway, I love it. But my point is, I would either go for Jeff Wilson or I would go for Michael Carter if one of those guys become available. And here's the thing. They have camp bodies. They don't need to bring one in because you've got Hassan Hall. Well, they probably are going to add another one because they did cut Nate McCreary. So they may add another one unless I'm missing something. But you've got John Kelly. You've got Hassan Hall behind Demetric Felton. You've got plays for camp reps because sometimes that happens. It's like they brought in more offensive linemen for camp reps because they had some injuries there. So I don't think they're going to be in a hurry. And if they start getting a couple of weeks from here and they see Ford's going to miss 2, 3, 4 games, I think that's when they'll really get that sense of urgency. And I think ultimately they'll go trade route because I think it's a much better situation than what free agency has at the running back position. But I do believe they add someone because of this injury.
I'm 100% on board with your JD. Like if they're going to go free agency, I think McKissick makes the most sense of everybody. He's the younger one and has been more. And like I said, no disrespect to any of the veterans, but we have seen their efficiency drop. And I just think it's so important knowing how the Browns want to use the running back room and knowing that guy is going to get significant playing time. It's so important to get somebody that's still got gas in the tank. And so, Jacob, I saw, I think it was PFF who tweeted out today that Dalvin Cook was practicing with the Dolphins, which
was he?
Which is a really interesting thing as a free agent. That's like, he went and visited the Jets and was like hanging out with them on the sidelines to practice, and he's with the Dolphins and he's hanging out with them. I don't know what's going on there, but I'll tell you what, I have liked both Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. It's like they were both in San Francisco together, and Kyle Shanahan's run scheme isn't so different than what Kevin Stefanski does. They're both very highly productive there. They've both been highly efficient with Mike McDaniel in Miami. I would take either one of those guys. Mostert's the older of the two. I'm not sure if his contract situation is different, but I'm imagining it's going to displace if Dalvin Cook does sign in Miami. I imagine it would displace one of them.
It may displace one of them. It may displace two of them. Don't forget that Myles Gaskin's on that roster too. And they just drafted Devon Achane. That's why I'm thinking about Jeff Wilson quite a bit when I was thinking about it today, because he may be available as is. He may be available without Dalvin Cook. One of them might be because they got 4 pretty good backs now.
Yeah, they do.
Maybe not 4 starters, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about guys that can be contributors behind Nick Chubb. I mean, it's Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Devon Achane, and Myles Gaskin, and it's like I would take one of those. They're not obviously not trading Achane or anything. Is it possible? We got a question here. Is it possible that gives Demetric Felton a chance to sign? It does. And MC brings it up as well that he believes he's a good piece if he's able to concentrate on the running back position. And that's what I'm looking forward to on Friday. One thing I'm really excited for on Friday that we talked about on this past week's Browns film room is Tyler Johnson and Mikey P and myself. We were talking about the game from last week. Is I really liked Demetric Felton. He was explosive. He was decisive. That was the important part. There's a lot of Demetric Felton prior to this where he does too much trying to make people miss. Like, do you remember, and like I just remember this as like a high school football memory where they'd be like, stop running east and west and dancing around like an idiot and run north or south. Well, he had a little bit of that in him at times, and he's a smaller player in terms of running back, wide receiver. He's
sure
weight wise, I think he's a smaller back, and so maybe that's part of it. But I think he looked decisive. He was only making people miss when he actually could. He was getting the yards that were given to him, and he looked explosive. And that's the stuff that he needs to do. And when I was getting ready to say, and MC talks about John Kelly, I said this to you. If I'm Andrew Berry and I'm Kevin Stefanski, and I get told, and really you don't know this, and it's really hard to know this, but if you get told, hey, he's going to miss 2 games, Jerome Ford's going to miss 2 games, do I think they could get by? I'm not saying they would thrive. Could they get by with Felton and John Kelly? I think so. I would still bring somebody in, even if it's a younger guy, like what did I say? Benny Snell, I think, is available, something like that. You know what I mean? But I think the combination of John Kelly, Demetric Felton, and Elijah Moore playing as a back, as we've seen him do a ton, if it's only a couple of games, I could see them, not that it would be the right decision, but I could see him just try to like kind of scrape by, especially knowing that they're going to throw the ball a lot more. And what you could see is just an uptick in Elijah Moore in the backfield than what you'll see the rest of the year. So I think they could limp through as is, but I do think they'll bring somebody in that they feel confident can give them something. But this is the opportunity for John Kelly. This is the opportunity for Demetric Felton, and this is the opportunity for Hassan Hall. I don't know that anybody of significance will be brought in until after Friday's game. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, you know what? I have a really terrible habit of forgetting Demetric Felton exists, but we know how much the Browns like their own draft picks. That's been a hallmark of this regime. And I thought Demetric Felton was good in the preseason, and I noted the first camp I went to, they were using Felton exclusively as the exclusive returner, which really struck me as odd with Jakeem Grant being there. And so it kind of signaled to me that maybe Felton is more likely to make the roster and be a guy that they're relying on than I had initially thought. So, you know what? Felton was pretty good in the first preseason game, and he's definitely going to get his opportunities now. I'm excited about that. And you know what? We talked about Hassan Hall in our previous episodes when he signed as an undrafted free agent. He does. He's good he's a pretty well-rounded player. He does a little bit of everything. So maybe he'll get his chance. He had a couple nice runs in the preseason game. You never know. Like maybe the answer isn't outside. Maybe they look inward.
And they get creative, I think. I mean, this is what we've talked about with defensive tackle before the Alex Wright injury and the Isaiah Thomas injury, but talked about those guys playing a lot inside too to make it work. You know what I mean? Like you put them in there and you can make it work. And I think that would be something I could really see them doing, is my point, is just, hey, he's going to be out less than a month in terms of games. He's going to miss less than 4. He's going to miss 2 games. And they could sit there and say, hey, I think with Felton and Elijah Moore, the 15 to 20 snaps we need out of a running back, I think those 2 can get it. I could really see them doing it. I probably wouldn't. Man, I do like, because you can't take too much stock from the preseason, but if Demetric Felton continues to look the way he does, I think there's a good chance that any addition they make is not going to be one that Browns fans will go crazy about. They're not going to be happy, is what I think. And I think a lot of that comes from they're leaning on their quarterback in that passing game and Nick Chubb. And while I ultimately think they'll end up adding one running back, there could be a situation where they're just trying to piece these things together for a couple of games and everything ends up being all right.
I would much rather the sexy name come at defensive tackle. Shelby
Yeah.
Harris. Please.
Yeah, if I'm making a move, that's where I'm making it. I'm just bringing in a placeholder because whoever you're bringing in at running back is not going to be here very long. That's like why these conversations about Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook and things like that I've seen, they don't make that much sense to me because from everything that we're hearing, Ford's not going to miss 10 games. Mm-hmm. Like if he's going to miss that, then yes, go get a significant player. Right. But go shopping for players that aren't going to make other rosters that are good enough, that are NFL players. Just find an NFL player to hold down the fort because hell, they're not getting that much attention behind Nick Chubb anyway.
This is a really interesting byproduct of NFL cuts being done differently, right? Yeah. Because when it was done in phases, you'd probably have more guys out there in the free agent pool right now that maybe you would look at or maybe you could bring in for a meeting. But because teams can hold on to all these guys for so much longer, it's a little bit of a more difficult situation. But at least it's far out right now. You've got time. Those hamstring injuries have a nasty habit of lingering. So let Jerome Ford heal up. Let's see what they do, because I think where our larger problems lie was the news of Alex Wright and Isaiah Thomas both having knee surgery. Knee surgery kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. That news is really tough to hear, Jacob. They had scopes. Just to put a bow on the running back, don't expect a big flashy name. That's okay. Just don't. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's okay. Just like with defensive tackle. I think at least for the next couple of weeks of the preseason, they're going to see what they got. That's what they were doing at defensive tackle, and it's starting to look like that was stupid. So we'll look at Alex Wright and Isaiah Thomas. Both have knee scopes today. Alex Wright posts a video in his story on Instagram of him in the wheelchair. That was before the announcement officially came out, but said he would be back soon, real soon. They expect them to miss a significant amount of time. Again, you've got 4+ weeks before the regular season, so you've got that advantage of everybody that is injured right now does have a month. Mm-hmm. Isaiah Thomas was a borderline roster guy to begin with. It's really tough because I think I really like him as a player. We'll see what happens because, again, how far is that? Like, what does bleed into the season mean? Like that's what we're saying. So we're not going to know, but I don't think that either of those are that concerning on August 8th. Now, if we are in week 8 or 9 and they're still not back or something like that, then maybe we'll look back on this and be like, oh my God, we messed it up. But what you're looking at here is you're looking at your 4th and 5th or 4th and 6th edge rushers, somewhere in there. And you're looking at these edge rushers that are behind 3 really good edge rushers. Yeah. I mean, don't forget that. Don't forget, it's not just Miles and Clowney out there. It's Miles and and Zadarius Smith, not Clowney. But I'm just talking about like what last year was. It was those guys. But now you're looking at the 2 starters that are really, really good. Inogbo Okoronkwo, who we thought was going to be a starter when he signed. Like when they signed him and he was going to start opposite Miles, I was stoked for that. I was stoked for him being a number 2. And now here he is as the number 3 with the addition of Zadarius Smith. And he almost became a forgotten player. Like he almost became this forgotten name because Zadarius Smith was so flashy. Those 3 dudes are going to get a ton of the reps. I would say combined. Oh, I don't know. I'm not good with percentages. But in terms of how many snaps anybody behind them is going to get while they're healthy, probably like 15 to 20 maybe. There will be probably 15 to 20 edge snaps that are not by one of those 3 players. So when looking at that, I don't think they'll add anybody. You'll see more playing time for guys like Lonnie Phelps, who I like quite a bit. Didn't really do much in the preseason game. And then you got Mamu Diabate, who is that linebacker who also does some pass rushing from the edge that I think is pretty good. And then a name that I was looking at earlier, Sam Kamara, had a pretty good game. The former Chicago Bear who played a couple of games with the Browns this past season.
he had a very a pretty productive, like 74 pass rush grade, 3 pressures. He had a stop tackle. He's a big power. He's a bigger 270-pound defensive lineman, similar to Alex Wright. So I think if you're looking for in-house solutions, I think Sam Kamara could find his way onto the roster potentially if Alex Wright's going to miss significant time. But Corey Kinnan pointed out it's going to be hard because if you're going to put those 2 players on IR, they're going to have to survive. You're going to have to leave them on the roster and cut other guys and then try to bring them back. So that'll get a little messy potentially. Yeah. But I think with Isaiah McGuire and then some of these other guys that they have around, I'm not too worried about those injuries unless they linger past the week 5 bye.
I think I'm more frustrated because we saw a couple of nice things from Isaiah Thomas last year, and you just hate to see a guy that when we did our roster predictions, I did predict him to make the team, and a guy that really just those roster bubble guys getting injured like that is just so frustrating. I feel bad for him. So we'll see what the Browns opt to do in that situation. And just with Alex Wright, I feel like he was a 3rd-round pick for the Browns, and you were really hoping to see, and he's still going to get a lot of the season, right? Like I think, despite the fact that the Browns are very mum about injuries, I think he's going to be okay. Alex Wright said himself he's going to come back. It's just when you're in those critical developmental stages, and on top of that, the Browns have had tremendous luck with Myles Garrett's health and just used him. I cannot count the amount of times we've seen Myles huffing and puffing because he's the guy that is just so heavily relied upon. And you did add Zadarius Smith, so I'm even more thankful that the Browns really went out and bolstered the DE room so much with Okoronkwo and with Smith as guys that legitimately you can rely on, because the last thing we want to do is get in that situation again. I'm still scarred from that Atlanta Falcons game because when Myles Garrett was gone last year, there was 0 pass rush. I don't think that's going to be the situation that's here, and I think the Browns can weather through it. I saw our friend Jack Duffin said that more than likely the Browns can just, if they have to, weather through 4 games with 5 defensive ends, then they can.
They've pretty much ran with that anyway for the most part. It's usually been 5-5 or 5-4 or 6-4 or something like that. Realistically, I think Isaiah Thomas, there was a chance he wasn't making this roster.
Yeah.
But with both of them, it does hurt because if it was just Alex Wright, you'd be like, oh well, Isaiah Thomas can hang around.
Yeah.
And if it was Isaiah Thomas, you'd be like, oh, well, I don't know if he was going to make the roster. And then when you put them both together, you're like, well.
Just a really frustrating string of injuries. All of a sudden, because I was so excited after the preseason game. I was like, the Browns escaped without major injuries. Everything's okay. And then all of a sudden, just little news trickles out about
Greg Newsome's hurt, then Ford's hurt, then Tristan Hill, who apparently had been doing really, really well before the preseason game, he's hurt, and you're just kind of like, oh, we're just doing this. We're doing this now. I saw Jeff Lloyd say this on his pod. He just dropped a new episode of his podcast, and he said it's not like a disaster that the 2 edge rushers had surgery, but it's not ideal.
Yeah.
And I think what I just keep coming back to is the trio at the top of that is going to carry it anyway. Mm-hmm. And it's a trio. It's not a duo. So you do get Okoronkwo can get the one thing that it hurts is you may not see as many formations of.
I think what Jacob was going at is just that there's going to be a little bit less flexibility with the defensive line and just your ability to kick guys inside and maybe play just Dalvin Tomlinson as your true defensive tackle and focus on pass rush as much as is that the direction you were heading there, Jacob?
Yeah, you're just not going to get as many as the NASCAR packages with all 3 of them on the field. I think you'll still get it. I just don't think you'll get it at the rate in which Jim Schwartz probably wants it. But
one thing I saw the first day at camp, which really excited me, was the fact that the first defensive line iteration in team was Dalvin Tomlinson, Zadarius Smith on the inside, Okoronkwo, and Myles Garrett on the outside. And that, I feel like that is your most exciting iteration of the 2023 defensive line. So I'm really looking forward to just seeing that. And I feel like it helps us very nicely transition into what we saw at a Rainey camp yesterday. And I know there's been a lot of talk about how the defense has been really dominant, and that can be looked at as a good and a bad thing. It depends how you feel. But I think overall we knew the talent was on defense, and so if they're being used better, I would like to think that they are going to be winning some days. So I'm not gonna get too up in arms about that. But the thing that was stuck out by far from our day at camp, Jacob, is that when they did red zone drills, because that's been one thing that's been continuously reported, is that the defense has been the winning unit in red zone drills. And we saw Deshaun get 8 attempts in those red zone drills and throw 6 touchdowns out of those 8 attempts. That was a really exciting, and it wasn't just to one guy. There was Elijah Moore and Donovan Jones.
And David Njoku had one.
Yeah, there were a lot of he was spreading the ball around and really I don't remember if Jordan Akins caught a touchdown, but we saw him and he did too. So you've got a lot of size there, and so it's nice to look at that and say the offense is making some progress out there.
Yeah, that was nice. I think at the start of the practice there was a little bit of some of the issues with the rain. I think when they were kind of they weren't doing 7-on-7s. They were really just running routes against air. There were some throws there and some of the one-on-ones that kind of got away. But as they kind of settled in, it was more of the same from Elijah Moore. You know, he continued to shine. That's why the episode is titled the way it is, man. Like he is, he's doing absolutely everything you can ask of him at this time of the year. I know what people are going to say. Oh, it's just the preseason. It's just training camp. It's all, yeah, it is. But that's all he can control right now. And with what all you can control right now, he looks great. Both short passes, intermediate, vertically, against zone, against man. He's kind of smaller in stature compared to like some of the other wide receivers on the team, like Amari and DPJ and Cedric Tillman, who is just, we'll get to Tillman in a second because they have 2 players that you absolutely do not have to try to find on the football field. Nope. It's DeJuan Jones and Cedric Tillman, because Tillman's going to be with the wide receivers / DBs, and he's going to be bigger than all of them, including DPJ, and it's noticeable. And then DeJuan Jones is going to be bigger than absolutely everybody on the team. So you'll find him. Those ones are pretty easy to find. If you're like, hey, I want to watch Cedric Tillman when he's up to, you won't have to try that hard to find him.
I'll tell you what, we were on our side of the stand. Cedric Tillman and Donovan Peoples-Jones were standing right next to each other. Yeah. And Tillman is noticeably bigger than a 6'2", a pretty big guy in his own right. Yeah. Donovan Peoples-Jones, and that guy's a rookie. I didn't get to.
And that was my point about DeJuan Jones last week. On this week's Film Room, I had talked about how he dwarfed Michael Dunn, who's 6'3", 315. And he dwarfed him. And he was noticeably, and it's like Michael Dunn is not a small guy, DPJ is not a small wide receiver, and Cedric Tillman is you're like, oh, okay. But Elijah Moore, before we move on to Cedric Tillman, and I'll let you have the field on the Cedric Tillman, but sure. It feels like the connection and the chemistry with him and Deshaun Watson is noticeable. If they're in a situation, which you can't really see it yet, but if there's pressure, it feels like that's where he goes. And you're not seeing a ton of that because they're not allowed to hit the quarterback and all that stuff. So some of that stuff is assumptions. But you can see him in those red zone 7-on-7s and things like that, where if he makes the first couple of reads and Elijah Moore's not, he's still going to find Elijah Moore. If Elijah Moore's his 4th read and he feels like the pressure in a real game would be starting to close in on him and he has to start to move, that's where he looks. He's looking a lot for Elijah Moore. And there was a pass where I think he kind of slipped out of his hand because it was a little bit underthrown. And Elijah Moore's body control. That is the thing for me why he was my draft crush a couple of years ago. His body control is stupid. He is running full force down the field and realize he needs to stop and come back because the ball's a little underthrown. And he's like, catch, whatever. And he doesn't get hit. He's catching these things in traffic and going down like Lamar Jackson. You know, Lamar never gets hit. At least during his MVP season, he never got hit. You were always like, how? And, you know, Jadeveon Clowney threw a shoe because he couldn't hit Lamar. And like, that's some of what I'm just telling you, man. He's got body control, reliable hands, route running, speed and athleticism. It's all this, seeing it in person, everything you've heard about what Elijah Moore has done in training camp. I can verify that stuff is true. He looks fantastic.
Yeah. You know what? The first day I was at camp, the offense had a pretty rough day in my own experience, in my own opinion. And after practice, it was Deshaun Watson and Elijah Moore talking to each other, practicing, running extra routes, staying with each other and doing that thing. And Jacob, I think you make a really good point, because you could tell there were a couple times where the plays broke down, and it definitely feels like Elijah Moore is the bailout guy. Yeah. I just get that vibe from him. And every day, people want to detract and say, well, Elijah Moore lit up Jets camp too, but the situations are so different when
they're not the same.
When you have a legitimate passer, a guy that is not Zach Wilson and is going and has a career history of has led the NFL in passing, has thrown 3 times the touchdowns as interceptions, has had over a 70% completion rate. And then you add to this where Elijah is just making these highlight plays day after day after day. Every day I've been at camp, Elijah Moore's done something that makes you just say, wow, that's and you know what? The other day on Twitter, Elijah Moore's catch over Denzel Ward, took over the whole spotlight. When you've got the type of chemistry where you're already throwing these basically perfect passes and right where it needs to be, so that even though Denzel Ward, who is a great corner, is in perfect position as a defender, sometimes the quarterback just throws a pass that you can't do anything about. And that's what you're seeing between Deshaun and Elijah Moore. And I think that's why people aren't excited about it for no reason. The Elijah Moore, if you go to camp, if you're seeing any of that, you see exactly why. And so to me, that makes it all the more real. It's not just a day. It's not just a couple practices or whatever. It is a trend that is continuously happening. And I'm going to keep shoveling coal in the fire of this locomotive that is the Elijah Moore train. It will not be stopped. Amari Cooper is going.
But Amari wasn't out there yesterday. He's doing, in a lot of these days, Amari with the injury and the veteran, he's rested on a lot of these days. So keep that in mind when you're looking at some of this stuff. It's happening without their number one wide receiver on the field.
Yeah, that's a big deal too, right? Because we talked about a lot about, can Elijah Moore be a number one wide receiver? Where does he rank in this pecking order and that type of thing? And it is not a coincidence that when Amari Cooper's out, the ball the majority of the time goes to Elijah Moore. I think we're learning a whole lot about that. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is getting his fair share of catches too. But I just think that every quarterback in the NFL has a guy that when he has to push the panic button and go in a direction, there's one dude. I think Elijah Moore is that guy, and I think that speaks to how significant he's going to be in this offense.
And then in the red zone, it's Cedric Tillman. I mean, it's still Elijah Moore, but Cedric Tillman and Jordan Akins and David Njoku had a pretty good day yesterday too. But in the red zone, man, and then Austin Watkins mossed a guy in the middle of practice. Yeah. That was pretty cool. Yeah. He's been having a pretty good go of it. Let me see here. MC says that would bet the Browns have a top 5 offense. I think they can push for it. I think
spicy MC. I like it.
Yeah. Is there a wide receiver that can throw a pass like Jarvis? I've not seen it yet, so I can neither confirm nor deny, Drew, because I have not seen an attempt, so I do not know if that's good. Also, by the way, don't think I didn't forget I need to be shot with a paintball gun. I've just been having issues locating supplies for that. I thought I had a line on some, and then he was like, "Oh no, my uncle said he got rid of it." And I was like, "Shit." But we're gonna work there. I'm a pretty chocolate person, so like I can think outside the box.
Yeah, definitely no vanilla here.
There's no vanilla here.
We love our chocolate ice cream.
Hey, you know what? Did you hear about that guy who died of a Viagra overdose?
Viagra overdose.
Yeah, they couldn't close his casket.
Oh no!
On the account of the erection.
Yeah, well, I love, my favorite thing about Jacob jokes are that, he lets him sit there, simmer for a little bit, and then he'll tell you. Exactly. Just give me the details, a full visualization.
Anyway,
Jacob, I just real quick, because I did not get to do the preseason game reaction show.
Yeah.
And I just want to say about Cedric Tillman, not the sexy stat line, but you can tell from his performance, the guy belongs. He's big. He's got reliable hands. He gets open. He was battling the cornerbacks. You can tell he's that physical guy that's gonna fight you tooth and nail to get open. It's exciting. He caught that bomb from Mond in camp that lit up Twitter as well. We watched him again yesterday, catching touchdowns and being a weapon in the red zone. You know what? For a long time, the Browns did not have big wide receivers, and all of a sudden, it's like Donovan Peoples-Jones is 6'2", Cedric Tillman is 6'3", Amari Cooper is 6'1" or 6'2", and you've got 6'1". So you've got three guys. You're starting besides Elijah Moore, but you've got three guys that are over 6 foot at the wide receiver position that I think you can legitimately feel good about. I'm so excited for what Cedric Tillman is going to bring. And I think it's really fun that he and Jalen Hyatt were picked back to back. It's going to be a really exciting to watch the two of them and see where they both come out. Because I'm excited. I think they both are really talented, and the Browns may have gotten the true value because of Tillman's injury, because he looks 100% healthy, ready to go out there, just making plays as a guy that gets to step in and not have a ton of expectations to contribute right away because of the Browns wide receiver. It's a perfect place to develop for Tillman. I couldn't gush anymore, and I'm not going to take up the Cedric Tillman train is off the running.
I just love the way he creates separation, because like he's a good route runner, but he doesn't have like the acceleration and like top speed of a guy like Elijah Moore. And he's bigger. He's bigger and slower than Amari Cooper, and not quite as good of a route runner, but he understands all of it. And his physicality at the point of attack is just like, if you want to know what I mean about his physicality creating all this separation, I say look no further than the play in which the defender got called for holding and still ended up 10 yards behind Cedric Tillman or in front of Tillman. Because even when he was holding, the physicality of Tillman sent him back and created a wide the hell open player in that game. And I think that's what I'm trying to say. And I get it, man. This is training camp. This is preseason. I get all of that. Take all of this with a grain of salt. But a lot of these dudes, in terms of like talent / potential / on paper, it shows. It shows what this roster is / should be. What we should expect in 30 days or whatever it is. This is what we should expect, because these guys are not just like, we've hyped guys before that didn't deserve it. and not all of them, Yeah, me too. Definitely. But some of them that are getting hyped this year, at least up to this point, have proven that there is a reason to be optimistic. I think optimistic is where I am, because you get all these reports in and out of camp. I was like, listen, I'm only going to camp one day this year, but I want to see what people are talking about. I want to look with my eyes and tell you what I think And what I think is both sides of the ball have the potential to be pretty good.
I'm excited.
Talkie, I wanted to do that. Talkie looked. The fact that this dude is even on the field tearing his ACL in December. Drew says he'll send me the paintball gun. Well, not of excuses.
What a gentleman and a scholar.
He is. He's just a fantastic human being. And he said some very nice things about me on Facebook today. So or a couple of days ago, and I just wanted to tell him that I really appreciate you. Really appreciate you, Drew, because you've been in the DMs with us and in the comment section and with us in this whole ride. And I don't know of many people that have been a bigger fan of us than you. So I really appreciate that. By the way, I just found another dick joke that was better than my first one, so I'm really upset. I'm not gonna tell it, but because I'm pushing the envelope if I do two dick jokes. I've already said dick like 5 times on this episode, so I should probably stop. I haven't used my F-bomb yet.
Maybe I'll use the F-bomb.
Oh man, that's probably fair. Actually, it's probably fair.
Talkie.
I'm sorry. Let me just one sentence about Talkie. He had one interception of DTR, almost picked him off again, and you couldn't tell that dude had ACL surgery 8 months ago. He looks fantastic.
That's, between him and Anthony Walker, there's been really positive reports about both of those guys working back from their injuries, and I think that's huge. We saw the whole rash of injuries in the linebacker room last year. We've already got enough injuries, so let's get these guys back. Talkie, Anthony Walker, Jacob Phillips, JOK, everybody healthy, and that would be a huge boost to if you're going to lose guys in one room, let's not lose them in another. So I'm excited about it. I thought, that was the most frustrating part, because Sione had a tremendous game just before he got injured last year. And I think collectively we thought he was turning the corner and really finding his way in this defense. So I'm so glad that he's here and that he has this opportunity. Who knows what he can play himself into.
What? I mean, they put him at Mike out of necessity, and they're like, oh man, I like, and a lot of people, me included, are like, man, because he had played Mike very, very early in his career in like the preseason and a few games like as a rookie and stuff, and it wasn't good. And because of his size and some of the athletic limitations he had, he just wasn't able to play Mike. And all of a sudden they put him in at Mike, and it's like, JK, I'm really good as a Mike linebacker. And I was like, extend him. And then he tears his ACL, and you're just like absolutely gutted. I'm being told to tell the dick joke. So 2 men, they went into a drugstore and they stole a bunch of Viagra, and the cops are now looking for 2 hardened criminals.
That's pretty good.
On the account of the erections.
Well, see, there's the detail, visualization. I really appreciate the help. Which
I hope I demonetize this. Fuck it.
I hope not. Which I gotta say, before I got a couple points.
No, you're good. We got time.
Yeah, but I just want to say, over 2,000 people have watched our preseason game recap episode, and a bunch of people have some. You all are amazing. The fact that Network 216 can do a preseason game recap where really the only starter that played was probably Cade York and Jordan Elliott. Well, there you go. We'll see where that goes. But the fact that has over 2,000 views and counting, and it was just posted on Sunday is incredible. I cannot wait for what this season is going to be with all of you. But I don't want to get us out of here too fast. I just want to say I am here for the Cleveland Browns offensive line factory to continue, because our friend and former guest on this show, Corey Kinnan, posted some Luke Whippler highlights where just textbook blocking, a guy that we talked a lot about, and getting that type of we both felt that was a value that the Browns got, and with DeJuan Jones playing the whole game and playing as well as he did, I don't think he gave up. Did he not give up pressure? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Which is insane. I really think that, yes, Andrew Berry's had some misses. I think we're not going to see. Well, Anthony Schwartz has been having some pretty good days of practice. We'll see where all these guys end up. My point is, Andrew Berry's also had some hits, and I think that this draft class is going to prove to have some damn good ones, especially later. If you can keep finding offensive linemen later in the draft, and good God, DeJuan Jones, at any time, I know we've talked about his size, and we could rave about it all day, but he is a massive human being. And for him to a guy that the guy came in with conditioning concerns and like, are you going to maintain your weight? Where's your effort level? He played the whole game in his debut, right? That takes stamina, that takes endurance, that takes being in the shape you need to be. All the reports have been so positive, and I really think that when we are at seasons, maybe not seasons end, but in the future, we'll come back and post clips of episode 114 of the Barking Brown Show and say, "Oh my God, we were right about DeJuan Jones. That guy was an insane value." I'm so excited about the future and just what the Browns have, because I didn't even touch on the Dorian Thompson-Robinson show. I didn't even touch on it, which, oh my God, it is amazing what happens when you get a quarterback room full of the same skill set that can run the same offense. That people talk all the time about Deshaun Watson's 6-game sample size, in which the Browns could not run the offense that suits him. It is so different this year. You can see in all of their just one preseason game, you can tell how the offense has shifted. And I can't gush enough. I can't do it. Dorian, I hope we see. It's going to be interesting, Jacob, to see, because Kevin Stefanski's been very mum on, are we going to get some starter minutes? Are we?
We should know tomorrow, but I would expect. There's going to be guys like, I don't think you'll see Zadarius Smith or Myles Garrett or Nick Chubb. I do think you'll see Deshaun Watson on Friday.
Oh, really?
I do. I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Not for very long, but I think you will.
Sure. Give me a series of. I would love to see that. I think Nick Chubb should just be in bubble wrap. We know that guy's ready. He's ready year in and year out. Batman should debut on September 10th. But as far as Deshaun goes, I'm in. Let's give him some action. But you know what? There's nothing. The Browns preseason games are going to be more fun than any other teams because you've just got exciting quarterbacks. We saw Josh Dobbs light up preseason last year. We saw Dorian Thompson-Robinson light up his first preseason game. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. So by the time we see you again, we are going to be fresh off a Washington preseason game, and we're going to be breaking it all down. I can't wait. These preseason games are. I had so much fun with the Hall of Fame game, which set record views, by the way.
Yeah.
The people want football, Jacob. The people want football.
Listen, I don't give a shit. Give it to me however you got it. I'll take it and I'll digest it, and we'll podcast on it. We'll write about it. We'll tweet about it. We'll just have a good old time, and then we'll go get some chocolate ice cream. Yeah.
Oh, God. You know what? The NFL preseason, in a very chocolatey manner, had NBA Finals viewership.
Yeah.
The Hall of Fame game where 2 starters for the Cleveland Browns played.
That's like Rocky Road.
We got
to stop with the inside jokes. People are like turning this thing off. They're like, what are they doing? I'm turning this shit off.
Thank you to everybody. The most valuable thing you can give to anybody is your time, including for multiple dick jokes, which was just fucking awesome. Quota filled. There it is.
Boom.
Boom. With that said, this has been episode 114 of the Barking Brown Show. I'm Nick. He's Jacob. Go Browns.
Go. They used IKEA rugs in Game of Thrones for the Night Watch's cloaks.